Hello, folks, and welcome. Welcome to Just Folks Conversations with Emma. I'm Emma, and I'm back with another terrific interview, another great conversation. Some of you may remember a gentleman that I interviewed very early in this process. His name was Bryan Alston. Well, everybody's got a parent somewhere, somehow. And today, you're going to get to meet the amazing parent of Bryan Alston. Today, we have Mr. Calvin Alston, who is a writer extraordinaire. Take a good look. 3 volumes, 3 wonderful volumes of Calvin's life in Baltimore, how he grew up. And let me give you a little bit about him before we start. Calvin is an actor, an author, and a playwright. He's a Baltimore native. He is a husband, and you already know he's a father. One of his sons you've met, that's Bryan. He's retired from the Maryland State Correctional System, and he's a 35-year veteran of stage. He is a writer. He is noted for his legendary portrayal of the legendary Cab Calloway in the musical production Sneaking Out at the Royal Theater. And for those of you who know a little bit about Baltimore history, the Royal is a landmark, or was a landmark. Now, Calvin has written and produced and directed 2 one-act plays, Christmas at Hartside with Paul Laurence Dunbar and Hartside with Paul Laurence Dunbar, The Wedding. He has a second and third book. The first one he released is Days of My Youth in Baltimore, a childhood memoir. Days of My Youth in Baltimore, the early years. And Days of My Youth in Baltimore, the middle years. And without further ado, I want to introduce you to the fabulous Calvin Alston. Hi, Calvin.
Hi, Emma.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you today.
Oh, it's just wonderful just spending a little time with you.
Well, I want to jump right into your writings. I have to say this before we start. I laughed, I cried, I chuckled, I smiled, I wiped my eyes. I had a ball. You are a very entertaining writer. And, everybody has a story to tell and everybody has a childhood. But I want to say that the way you were able to capture your childhood took me back to mine. And that's part of the charm. What motivated you to start writing?
Well, I tell you, I have been writing most of my life. When I was about, I guess, about 7 years old, I was making comic books. Uh, First of all, I would use the newspaper as my canvas, and I would just make up stories, make and write little figures as I go, make up my own stories. But sometimes I would use existing figures like Superman or something like that from TV, and but then I graduated into making my own comic books, and I would take notebook paper, fold them over, put a paper clip on them, and I would draw the figures and even color them in and put captions on them and make up the stories as I go. And as a matter of fact, I still have 2 of those original comic books. They are more than 65 years old, and the paper clip is still on them. The original clip, I have kept them all of these years.
That's
So
wonderful.
yeah, so I was just doing that. That you probably read it in my book. I would in my solitary uh, theater, just by myself, making up stories from figures that I had seen in the movie or on TV, and and so I was just making up stories as I go. So I've done that most of my life. But saying that, I never considered myself to be an author. Uh, I wrote the one short story in 1967 while I was in the military. Uh, I, Bill Cosby was popular at that time, and so we were listening to some of his records. And on his record, he related a story called Night Monsters. Uh, so he was so afraid of monsters when he was a kid, and he's telling this story, and I'm saying, my sister and I went through the same thing. I said I could write this myself, and I did
Yeah.
start writing. And so I made this one short story, and I kept it down through the years, and then I let my niece and my sister read it when I got discharged from the military, and so um, my niece Deborah told me, "Well, you need to just make other stories, like our Christmas and things, yeah, and just do a book." I said, "Well, I said I'm not an author like that." I said, "This is just one story, that that I've written. I'm really not a." So she said, "Well, think about it. Think about it." So I said, "She said, and think about the times we used to have with Daddy, and growing up in the house." And so I thought about that, and that's why I wrote so much about my father in that
Wait,
first.
and your father was a very impressive man. You have quite a few siblings. How many in your family?
Yes, there were 8 of us originally.
Mhm.
Um, I had one brother that passed away a year before I was born, uh, and 2 of my siblings. I had an older sister who grew up in another household, and my younger brother also grew up in another household. But that was not unusual back in the day with large families. So sometime usually when you hear the expression, it takes a village to raise a
Yes,
kid.
yes,
Well,
it still does.
sometimes there were families that didn't have children or had smaller families. They would take a child from a family, and they would
Mhm.
raise them. And my aunt and uncle raised one of my sisters, and she stayed with them for all of her life. And my brother, my younger brother, was raised. But we were all in the same neighborhood. He lived
Mhm.
right across the alley from us, so he's a year younger. And matter of fact, I dedicated my second book to him, Sherman. And so we
Yes.
grew up together, but we lived right across the alley from each other in the next street. And my sister lived right around the corner. So we were still in the same neighborhood, but just in different households. And I had an older sister, and Ada. She had moved away. Well, she had got married, moved away at that time. As I was, in my real early years, and my brother was in the military. Uh, so I had 2 of my sisters and myself. We grew up in the old house,
Mhm.
and then when we
Well,
finally moved, then it was just my younger sister and myself.
I see. Well, what I'm seeing is that your parents and your dad in particular, I noted, you noted, had only a fourth grade education because he had to go to work.
Right.
So that was really a sacrifice. But yet, he was able to provide for all of the children, and your family
Yes.
reflects the love and the support. And I know he played a really major role in your life.
Yes. Yes. He did, and I miss him so much even to this day. Uh, we had started to bond when I was 16 as father to son instead of his little boy. I was his son, and he was teaching me to drive, and he was just teaching me how to splice wire and the different things. He was just, and we had started to bond, and it was really so special. But then when he got sick, and then uh, he was gone.
Mm.
And I was just so traumatized that I could not even grieve because all of a sudden my father was taken away from me just as I was getting to know him. And so it was years. I just couldn't think about it. I just couldn't, just couldn't grieve.
Mm.
But when I started writing about our experiences growing up, about my father, that was therapeutic for me. Just writing about him and the good times that we used to have. So I was able to finally get through that anger at having lost him. And that's why the
And
first book is so much of him in that book.
yes, and that's one of the things that I wanted to, emphasize is that the healing power of writing, what that was able to help you do, because you mentioned anger.
Yeah.
Sometimes grief shows up as anger.
Yes. Yes.
So there was a s- a segment that you wrote about, it's December 1962, that last Christmas with your father.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have your book with you by any chance? Do you
Yes.
have a copy?
Yes, I do have
Okay.
it.
I would like to hear in your own words, if you wouldn't mind, reading starting from page 65 of this one.
Okay. Where did you want me to start?
Start at the part that says December 1962 was our last Christmas with Daddy.
December 1962 was our last Christmas with Daddy. It had been a rough year for our family. Our father's health had really deteriorated those last few months. He was frail and gaunt, and his breathing had become labored. Cardiovascular disease had taken a toll on his body. I saw my father in tears for the first time. He sat in a chair, slowly shaking his head from side to side. It's been a mighty poor Christmas this year, he lamented. Being unable to provide his family with the festive Christmas he had been accustomed to was very depressing to Daddy. His family meant everything to him, and Christmas in particular was special. We had an old piano in the house for many years. The only time I remember my father playing it was during his illness. He sat at the piano and very softly and slowly, his trembling fingers rolled over the keys as he chorded the hymn, Silent Night. During that same week, a bunch of us were playing around with a reel to reel tape recorder. We were recording ourselves singing Christmas carols and just having fun. Daddy was listening to us from the next room. Walking very slowly, he came into the living room and requested to take a turn at the mic. He asked someone to announce him. With trembling hands, he took the mic and, with a voice barely audible, began to sing. Have you seen old Santa Claus anywhere today? If you see him anywhere, tell him to come my way. I have got no money for him, but I'll bid him in. Mother sends her love to him. Daddy sends a penny. A week later, 3 days before Christmas, my father passed away. He died in his sleep. Mother woke me that morning and told me that he was gone. As I looked at him lying in repose on the bed, I took his cold, lifeless hand in mine and whispered to him, I'll take care of things now, Daddy, I said. At age 16, I couldn't imagine life without my father, but I had to accept the fact that I was now the man of the house. So many memories passed before me as I held his hand. I remembered the last fishing trip the two of us went on the previous year. I remembered how proud he was of the striped bass he had caught. Then he let me drive the car as we made our way up the wooded path from the fishing hole. And I remember how he taught me to peel and slice vegetables and fruit, or just watching him take apart and repair the intricate mechanisms in a pocket watch. My father was a very skilled and talented man. Now he was gone. We celebrated Christmas on December 28th, the day after my father was buried. We all gathered at the Oliver Street house that Friday night. My four sisters, older brother, nieces, nephews, and friends was there. Mother Had plenty of food cooked, and everybody came and laden with gifts and to be distributed later that evening. We traditionally began with everyone holding hands in a circle prayer, giving thanks for the occasion and just remembering Daddy and how much he loved Christmas. After dinner, we all gathered in the living room. We had very few decorations up that year, but we still had a Christmas tree. We always began our festivities with the singing of a few carols. Then someone said a prayer, and we culminated this portion of the evening with the singing of our traditional Christmas song, The 12 Days of Christmas. And we would separate in groups of 2 to 5, and each would sing a part, mostly off key. The only harmonious part of the song was the five golden rings, partly sung by my cousins and sisters. We had so much fun. After that, we exchanged gifts. Paper, ribbons, and boxes were flying all over the room, and everybody received something. And as a family, we had much to celebrate, even though we were grieving the loss of our father. When we grieve a loved one, it is vital to recall cherished details and shared experiences of our lives together. It is a time of giving God thanks for the stories and the impact of an entire life. Someone once said, precious memories of life can temper the profound sadness of death. Christmas could never be a sad time for me. I treasure the spiritual significance of the day, and I treasure the memories of my daddy. That was tough.
That is beautiful.
That was
That
hard.
is a very beautiful tribute. And it appears to me that in your living, you have demonstrated that uh, really the adoration of your father and things that he did for you and
Yes.
your siblings and your family.
Yes.
Wow.
He loved his family, and he was a disciplinarian, but his bark was worse than his bite. He would do anything for his family, and he'd be complaining all the time, but still doing it.
Mhm. Well, I gather you and your siblings are still close to this day. You had mentioned in one earlier conversation that we had that you wrote a kind of a history, a genealogy of your family.
Yes, yes. This is around 2011. I did a history of my mother's family. Uh,
Mm,
and her family was huge. There were 12 siblings in her family of North Carolina, Littleton, North Carolina.
mm,
Uh, nobody of course, the families were scattered to like 5 states, and a lot of us didn't even know who was connected to who.
mhm,
And it was at my brother-in-law's funeral that my cousin came to me and said, cousin Calvin, you need to write the history of our family. I said, nobody has done a family tree or wrote the history of our family, the family's being lost. And I think you should be the one to do that. So I said, well, why me? Nobody else is put it on. She says, well, I just I just feel in my heart that you need to do that so that our family's not lost. I'll think about that. And I did think about it, and I thought about my youngest sister who grew up with me. She had this is before the internet. She had gone down to North Carolina to the archives and got death certificates and birth certificates, and she had got some documents years before that, but that was all we had. So I said maybe that's a start, uh, and I'll try to search out this history. But it was a mammoth task. It took me 2 years uh, contacting her siblings and their families and getting putting the family tree together, and it's a very extensive tree. But I finally got it done, and I did the written history on each of her siblings, and so that was a hardback published in 2011, and most of the family members did get a book. Uh, so I was proud of that because the family was able to come together. When we have a family reunion, we knew who was connected to who. You know, some of
Yeah.
us meeting each other for the first time.
Mhm.
People that I interviewed never saw me, didn't know me. You know, my cousins, and so
Mhm.
it was just wonderful, just getting to know my family. And I had one of my cousins, one of the older, one probably my oldest cousin, my mother's niece. She was like in her 90s, and she told me that one of her grandsons had gone to one of the colleges up there, and had met this young lady, and they started exchanging information, and he was her this brother one brother was living in Glassboro, New Jersey. The other one was living in Patterson, New Jersey. So they were in the same state. And so these young man, this get to know this young lady, and they found out that they were actually cousins, and they
Mm.
didn't know it. They didn't know. So she says, that's why I'm so thankful that you have written this book. You
Yeah.
know, she said the
Yeah.
family really, really needed this, and so I really felt that that was my mission. And so I just published. That was my mother's family, so I just published my father's history last year, and that his family was nowhere near as large as my mother, so it didn't take me that long. It took me about maybe 6 months, and
Mm.
Bryan helped me to do the research uh, because we had the internet this time, and so we were able to get the information quickly, and so that book was published recently. So now that Bryan and I are working on Alicia's parents'
Oh, okay.
families. So he
All
and I
right.
are collaborating on that, and that's going to be a book that contains both his grandparents' families in one book.
Mm.
So so
It's wonderful.
so
And
yes,
Alicia, of course, is your wife and Brian's mom.
yes, right.
Yes. Yes.
And
So,
my my editor.
okay.
Yeah,
Par excellence,
yeah,
because
editor
we,
par
we're both
excellence.
school teachers, so you know what we look for.
Yes,
Yeah.
nothing gets past her. I said,
Oh, clearly, clearly, the evidence is in all three of these beautiful, beautifully written books.
thank you so
Um,
much.
Now I'm going to ask you a question that no one should ever ask a parent about their children, like what's your favorite child? But
Uh,
I just might have a sneaking suspicion as to which of these three. I'm holding up two. Let me get the third one up here. Okay. Do you have a favorite child?
do I have a favorite child?
Favorite book?
A favorite book? Oh my! It, it, I tell you about my books. I was encouraged to write all three of my books. Uh, God inspired me as I wrote them,
Mm.
but it was my family and friends that encouraged me to write. I was telling you about the first book about my niece and my sister, who I mentioned in there, and I have to mention about my younger sister who I grew up with. She has been my biggest supporter. She found the publishing house for me. She helped me to fund all three of my books, uh, and she has been there for me.
And which sister is this here by name?
This is Trish, Patricia, my younger
Yes.
sister that we grew up together, uh,
Yes.
and she I can't say enough about what she has done really in all my books because I was telling you, but she did the research for my family book, going down to North Carolina. So she has been the biggest contributor. But so I was encouraged to write all of my books because after I did the first book, People read that, and they enjoyed that, and we did a fundraiser at the church, it was a book signing and everything. But then someone said, well, you talked a lot about you growing up in the neighborhood, but you didn't talk enough about the neighborhoods themselves. You need to, the neighborhood.
Hmm.
So you know what that means. You need to write another book about the neighborhoods. And so that's how the second book was written. And I went into all of my neighborhoods and the demographics and the descriptions and everything in that book. Uh, which was needed, but I just wouldn't. If no one had encouraged me, I probably wouldn't have written
Well,
that book. And
well,
so,
you've done an excellent job. And what I want to point out is that in the first book,
uh-huh,
you did have an illustrator
right,
who did a fine job,
uh-huh,
but the second and third books were
yes,
illustrated by you.
yes,
And you, I must say, really captured the feel of the communities. I mean, looking at the illustrations really helps you to get a fuller impression of what it was like to grow up in the neighborhood, in the community. And I just really want to commend you on and
thank you.
having a way another way of just pulling the reader right into your experience.
Yes,
You did an excellent job.
I had I had another author to read my first book, and she said, she said the stories are nice. She said, but you need some illustrations to complement the stories. So I said,
Yes.
okay. Uh, but, but I have to tell you this story about illustrations, okay?
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
why I did not illustrate the first book. Uh,
Okay.
I've always been able to sketch, always been able to draw, even from, when I was a child, and then, I started to get better. Uh, I went to the art school, and
Hmm.
in order to get into the Visual Arts Institute, you had to demonstrate the ability to draw, to sketch objects.
Hmm.
They tested you on that before you get into the school. So I was able to do that. Here's the thing. I started using my talent as far as being able to draw, objects that I see. I started using it in a very unsavory way. Uh, I was making caricatures of people on my job.
Hmm.
It was very good characters. You could tell who they were, and particularly people I particularly care for. And I was posting them on the bulletin board, and people would see them and laugh, because I was putting them in embarrassing situations,
Okay.
and I had the byline of the Phantom on there, so nobody knew who I was. See?
Oh,
And they were really getting laughs out of it. I had a couple of people who knew that they would give me ideas, and I had them sort of secrecy and everything like that. And so we were getting a good laugh. And so here's the thing: people knew that I was a Christian because at my job, and I was as a correctional officer going into one of the most notorious prisons in the state. Before I would go to my job, I would read my Bible. People would see me reading my Bible. They knew I was a man of God and all that. So now I'm doing these caricatures, so nobody suspected it was me.
hmm. Okay.
The conviction came down on me so hard. I got that epiphany. God clearly told me, this is not Christian work you're doing, holding people up to ridicule. I mean, he's speaking to my spirit, right?
Hmm.
Got to stop. This is not spreading the word. This is not letting people know who you are. Stop it. And I did. I threw away everything I had pending the post. I kept a few things for his artistic record, but I just completely stopped. And I asked God to forgive me for doing that. Uh, I had people just wondering who this was. From the warden to the supervisors, I spared nobody. And I was really taking a chance, because if I had gotten caught, I would have been in a lot of trouble. But that's what the rush was, when caught.
Hmm. That's interesting. Hold that thought just for a minute, because we're going to talk a little bit later about the rush that you had in an earlier part of your life when
Yes,
you were engaged in something as a child, basically,
yes,
um, that had to do with um, ownership of items.
yes. The
Okay.
shoplifting. Yes,
Yeah, the shoplifting. And
yes,
you commented about the rush that you
yes,
got from that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just doing something and getting away with it. Not that I
Mhm.
needed any of that, but
Right.
it was just the rush of doing something and getting away with it. Uh, but you see, here's the thing. Uh, you can repent of something that you do, and I
Mhm.
repented for everything. But you see, there are consequences, even though you're forgiven. My
Mhm.
consequence, as far as my drawing was, is that I lost it.
What do you mean you lost it?
And people do not believe this, but it's true. I lost the ability to draw. I couldn't do it anymore. And it was like God saying, I'm gonna make sure that you aren't tempted to do this again. So I couldn't. And it was really something. I looked at some of my work that I'd done, and I tried to just replicate what I did. I tried to just copy what, couldn't do it. I had
Mm.
trouble doing stick figures. So I said, this is, the consequences of it. I don't, just have to live with that. But when it came to my book, I needed illustrations, and I could not draw anymore. So that's why I hired my cousin to do the illustrations for me, and I did little stick figures to let him know what I wanted, and then when he did the book. So when I was ready to do the second book, I needed about 18 more illustrations. And so I said, well, I'll get him again. But he was nowhere to be found.
Mm.
He didn't return calls. He was gone. I had no illustrator. I said, now I have a problem now, because I'm facing a deadline here and get this book to publish. And I have no illustrations. And so I said, well, then I prayed, I said, well, what am I going to do? I can't draw anymore. And the Lord clearly spoke to my spirit, said, pick up a pencil and draw.
Mm.
And I'm saying, I can't draw anymore. Pick up a pencil and draw. So I picked up a number 2 pencil and I started drawing the first illustration. And then I was able to do the rest of them. But here's the thing. He gave me, he restored enough of my talent to be able to do these illustrations, but not to the level that I used to be able to do it. These illustrations really, as far as the work that I used to, but I was making those cartoons, it was still look like a different person, because they were kind of crude as far as what I would have done had I drawn them originally.
Mhm.
But he restored enough that I was able to do the illustrations, and I was thankful for that. So I tested myself, and I got some of my original work, and I tried it again to see if I could just replicate what I had already done. And I still could not do it. I could come close this time,
Mhm.
but I still could not. It was like I was another person that did that.
Well, it's very, very interesting you should say that, because as I look at the illustrations, and I'm encouraging everyone to run out, literally run to, there's going to be a link for you to follow so you can purchase these books. But
Mhm.
just to, let me pull this one up.
Ah, yes, yeah,
There's a warmth, there's um, the emotion is there, so that as you read, you also feel the environment fully. So
yeah,
and I also have a theory that and it's not just my theory, but I I abide by this, and that is nothing happens by accident, and everything happens for a reason.
Yes, I believe that too.
And even though you may not have um, had the best of intentions with your original drawings, the caricatures that you were doing at work,
Mm-hmm.
um, there may have been a higher purpose in place for those people that you targeted.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know, what message was being sent to them through you for them to consider about who they are, who they were, and what they were engaged in, what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And when that time was over, then your assignment at that level was done. And then you were able to, years later, pick up the pen, the pencil, and move forward. But these are really lovely illustrations. And what I like about what you highlight in just the drawings would be just enough detail to say, absolutely, this is Baltimore. But in addition, it gives us it's almost like being there. It's kind of like being in a movie in a sense. There's enough. I don't know how else to explain it. Folks, you're just going to have to go out and get your own copy and really read and just enjoy these volumes. They're wonderful, but they are beautifully illustrated, and the stories are so warm and engaging. I have a sister, just one sister, and when we were little, and I'm kind of jumping around, but as things come up, I just wanted to share them.
Mm-hmm.
We, that I started off by saying that I laughed and I cried and I chuckled. This first volume of you and your sister dealing with the monsters, as you referenced, Bill
Yeah.
Claus, I'm telling you that your gift, I just couldn't help myself. My husband walked by and I'm sitting in the chair and I'm just chuckling. My shoulders are going up and down. He said, "What are you reading?" I can't even talk. Um, the you really captured the perspective of little children, which is what was so fascinating. You actually took me back to being a child and remembering how it felt to be afraid of things that you couldn't really reach out and touch. Let me pull up the page. I'd like for you to share just one more, particularly when your older sister came back, I think, and stayed up the hall with, was it one of your aunts? Because you and Patricia shared a room.
Yes.
And then at one point, you were left in that room by yourself.
Yes.
Okay.
Very traumatic time.
That was hilarious. I have marked off so many pages here. I can't remember where that one is, but let's see. Was that in chapter 2 where you were abandoned, or were you in that back room where you were safe from the monsters?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it was, we could start on, honestly, I wanted to read the whole entire chapter, but this is the illustration that your cousin did, but this kind of gives us a sense of what you guys were dealing with as
Yes.
little people.
They were very, very real to us.
Yes. And it was Aunt Bessie. That's who you
Yes.
who had, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not doing this part very well because I'm just remembering the story and chuckling to myself again. Is there an incident that you'd like to share with the listeners and the viewers?
Well, I think the part with when I was back there protecting my sister, when
Hmm.
my aunt started, she worked for a Jewish family, and
Hmm.
the Jewish holidays, a lot of times she would have to uh, work late in preparing meals and things like that. So that's why she wasn't in the room, and I had to go back in the back room where my sister was sleeping in her bed.
Okay, let's start out and set this up so everybody knows who everybody is.
Okay,
Okay, you are about how old?
I would say about 7.
Okay, and Trish and you used to share a room together.
She's older than me.
Okay, she's a little older than you, but
Uh,
then she moved to your auntie's room at the end of the hall,
yes, uh,
leaving you alone.
Yes, my parents did that because they got tired of us. My sister started seeing some things, these monsters, and then she would get me all scared, and then we would run into their room and get them all upset. And so that's why they separated us, and they put her in the back room so she could be with my aunt,
Okay.
since she was suspected to be the ringleader, and that left me in the middle room by myself to deal with the
Okay.
monsters. And
So
she had
you've got
already
your parents,
brainwashed me.
parents, parents on one end of the hallway, your auntie at the other end, and
Yeah,
then the two of you were in the middle. But
yes,
because of all the disruption every night with the fright and the fear running into your parents' bedroom,
yes,
they separated you and
yes,
your sister got to stay with Aunt Bessie.
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, but like I say, when my Aunt Bessie started working in the evening, and she was still back there by herself, and so that's why they set me back there to stay with her until my aunt came home from
Mhm.
work. So of course we kept the light on the whole time, and so you would think that she would feel safe with me back there with her and the lights on. But then she started looking out in the hallway, peeping underneath the door in the darkness, looking at the monsters. And I'm saying, why are you doing that? We're safe. We're inside. We got the light on. They don't like the light. We're safe. Why you? But she was insistent they were out there trying to get in. So, and I think I put it there. She went to sleep by the door. I went to sleep on the bed. She went to sleep on the floor by the door. And my aunt came in and hit her in the head, opening the door. But she was, and that's when my when my father put a latch on the inside of the door.
Mm.
But then when the my aunt came home one night, the latch was on, and then she couldn't even get in her own room because she was locked out. So it was just,
Oh my goodness.
that
Oh
was
my.
the time. I'm telling you. Of course we wouldn't share this with any of the other neighborhood kids because we would not want anybody to know that we were
Mm.
going through this much trauma, that we were this much scaredy cats.
Yeah. But Trish was your protector at
Yes,
school, in the
she was my
schoolyard.
protector. Yes,
If you'd had some experiences with being bullied and
yes,
maybe even trying to dibble dabble into being a bully yourself.
yes, yes. I started out being a bully myself before I became a victim of bully, uh,
Mm.
and that was influenced by my friend Billy that I mentioned in the book. We
Mhm.
were like 5 years old, and we were targeting this boy in our class as we got out at noon. The classes were just a half a day in those days, and then we would be beating up on this boy every day, but it just never felt right for me. But I was doing it because Billy was doing it. Uh, Billy, it was like he came into the world with his dukes up. His father was a prize fighter, and they brought him
Okay.
up to be tough, and
Mhm.
so if for no reason, he would beat up on this boy because I wanted to keep his friendship. I was beating up on the boy too, but then, I said I couldn't do this anymore because I felt sorry for the kid,
Mhm.
and that's when Billy told me, you can't be my friend anymore since you're not with me in this. But I had no heart for that. I just really,
Mhm.
even as I was beating up on the boy like he was, it just was not in me to do it. I was doing it just to please Billy.
Mhm.
And I wrote in the book that many years later, uh, Billy was incarcerated uh, in the Maryland Penitentiary, uh,
Mhm.
where I was an officer and I had the key to his cell.
Mm. Did he recognize you? Did he know who you were?
Oh yes, but I told him, he was calling me by my first name, so I says, I'm Officer Alston. Uh,
Mhm.
you're the inmate. I'm the officer. This is where it's got to be. And really, the crime that he was convicted of was so heinous. you know, I wouldn't consider him a friend anyway. Uh,
Mhm.
it was tough, you know, but it shows you the way I was brought up and the way he was brought up.
Mhm. And you spent a considerable amount of time in church as a child.
Yes, I did. Grew up in church every Sunday, Sunday school, and all of that. And I was doing that at the same time. I was taking stuff out of stores. I was, you know, that's that, that's the real mystery about this. I had no one influencing me, no peer pressure, nothing. But I was just doing this. You know, I was just shoplifting at the same time. I'm in church every Sunday, reading the
Mhm.
Bible. You know, I knew right from wrong. I was, you know, raised in those principles, and
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
I still did stuff like that. You know, I was just sneaky. You know,
We'll talk a little bit about what that felt like for you, in this situation, how skillful you were actually you were not more than what, 12, 11, 12?
no, I was younger than that. I was what 7, 8 years old. I was still doing it.
Okay.
Um,
Mhm.
and I wrote in the book about trying to influence my brother, my younger brother, to,
Mhm.
to steal comic books too. You know, and that's when I got caught when he was with me, and I'm trying to
Mhm.
teach him how I
Mhm.
steal, and I got caught. And that's when my epiphany came, when I got away and he left my brother behind, ran,
Mhm.
got under the covers and started praying, you know, Lord, please get me out of this. I will not do this again.
Mhm.
And that
And
was
you didn't.
no, I didn't. I did not. That was the last time. Getting caught like that was the last time I got my epiphany, and I asked God to forgive me for that. And yeah, yeah, this was after I had been baptized and everything. So it's
And years later, though, you said you saw the clerk who intervened as you were
yeah,
engaging in.
yeah. I would see him from time to time in the street, and I
Mhm.
was tempted to go up to him and say, "Hey, I was that boy that stole from you that time," but another voice was telling me, "Let sleeping dogs lie." Might be a statute of limitations somewhere by then because I could not remember actually returning the books. I don't
Okay.
remember confessing it to my parents it wasn't like me to do that anyway because my father would not have tolerated that at all. He would have
Mhm.
given me a whipping and make me go back to the store, apologize, but I don't remember anything about that, and my brother doesn't remember anything either. I just
Mm.
remember being under those covers and praying.
Well, the lesson came through loud and clear. Um, I I see you having lived a life of contradictions in
Mm,
many ways.
yeah.
Um, you have a really strong foundation in biblical principles, and it seems to me you wanted to test them to see if they worked.
Yes. Yeah.
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 And apparently you've got all the right answers because you have a beautiful family. You've been married how many years now?
40.
40 years. Yeah.
Yeah. 40
Um,
years next month.
which is wonderful. Congratulations to you.
You. Thank
And
you.
you and your wife, Alicia, your beautiful wife, have two wonderful young men who have grown into wonderful adults. And as I mentioned earlier, the
Yeah, they
audience has met Bryan.
both our sons. Proud of what they've accomplished.
Mm. So um, I think that for you, we could summarize really your life in Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it.
Yeah. Mhm. And I like the way I ended that. I said, for more than a dozen years of my young life, Bible teaching was drilled into me. I was raised with biblical discipline. I read the word on my own. It was a part of me, even when the application wasn't apparent. God was with me, although I didn't acknowledge his presence except when I was in trouble. Ultimately, I found my way back to church when I found my way back to God. He never moved.
That's beautiful. It's poetic as well as true. Um,
Yeah.
well, Calvin Alston,
I'm blessed.
yes, you are,
Blessed.
and you are a blessing. So what you are receiving, you are also giving. So it's circular.
But
It
you
is.
know, Emma, we were talking about the first two books. I had thought I was finished telling everything when I wrote the first two books, and
Mhm.
and once again, I had a friend of mine, uh, Sandra Walker. I dedicated that last book to her. She was on me about not revealing enough by growing up my teenage years. She said, you know, you left a lot of stuff out. You're talking about days of your youth, you know,
Mhm.
but there's a whole lot of story you left untold. So I said,
Mhm.
well, I really don't want to tell anymore. I said, because, you know, there's too many secrets there that I was just want to take to the grave with her. She said, well, that's not honest. She said, if you're going
Mhm.
to write an honest story, tell it all. I said, you're talking about everything. She said, you need to tell it all. Everything you feel like you need to tell it.
Mhm.
And I tell people, you know, I think I revealed a little too much in in that third book, but at least it's out there. I really, when I revealed as much as I did in that book, in that third book, I was
Mhm.
thinking of what I went through as a teen, thinking that I was by myself in this, and no other young boy could be as going through as much as I have gone through, and be as messed up as I, and be as isolated as I, and
Mhm.
just have so much stuff going on by dealing with myself, and I had no one to talk to, you know.
Mhm.
So I said, well, this book maybe some other young boy going through some of the same trauma
Mhm.
I was going through may read that story and be encouraged to know that you're not alone. You got other people going through the same things that I was going through.
Well, you certainly did go through a lot. Just to summarize for our audience, give an overview of what that was like for you, that period of time.
You know, like I said, I just felt like uh, who could be going through as much as I am, you know, not knowing really what what uh, what kind of skills that I have, what kind of future I might have. Uh, I wasn't all that great of a student. I hadn't really got the confidence to write, and I wrote in the book about one of my teachers really encouraged me there. Uh,
Mhm.
but it was, and I really had no friends. I was by myself most of the time, you know. It was like I was an individualist.
Mhm. Was there a particular event or a situation that you could use as a right now as a concrete example of what you were experiencing? I mean, most of us can think back like, yeah, in general, I felt like because as teenagers and young adults,
Yeah.
uh, adolescents, you do feel like that's how our brains work. We feel like we're the only ones going through something.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
can you give an
I
example?
think it goes back to the loss of my father. That was and all of a sudden being the man of the house, knowing
Mhm.
that I had to work, I had to get a job, I had to help my mother out. And I had no other male mentors. I was just, doing what I had to do to make some money. And but I just did not have my father. And I think
Mm,
that's where it all uh, began to go downhill for me. You know,
mhm,
uh, yeah. And so I didn't
and-
have any, like I said, I didn't have any friends, didn't have any girlfriends. I was just pretty much by myself.
mhm. Well, you did go into the military though, and that experience, what was the overall impact of having that regimented kind of life, and how long were you in the
Well,
military?
I didn't understand. What did you say?
What, you did join the military,
Yes.
and how did that impact your life? It's very regimented,
The, the,
expectations.
the
It's orderly.
military for me was wonderful. Uh, I was able to really be confident in that I had a job that um, I was good at. Uh, I was making successful rank, and I really loved the life that I was living, particularly overseas.
Mhm,
It was just a good time for me in my life, just being in the military and
mhm.
just seeing how the other part of the world is. It was then I really got confidence in being in the military. That military discipline and all of that was just it was just good for me.
And you had some interesting experiences, though, while you were in the military.
Hmm.
Different kinds of people that you met, places that you traveled.
Yes.
Want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. Particularly when I went overseas in 1967, just experiencing just being on foreign soil for the first time. And this was in nationalist China, in Taiwan. That's where I was stationed, and just being is just a beautiful part of the world, and just being exposed to a different language and seeing all the beautiful women, and it was just a great time uh, in my life. It was some trauma there, as you read in the book, and I write about that. Uh, but I thought that I could spend years, and I had planned on spending uh, my years as a military veteran. That's what I wanted to do. The only reason why I came out is because of where uh, they shipped me after I left where I was in China, and it was a lot of prejudice there, and uh, so I just
And
got
they sent you to.
they sent me to South Dakota,
Mhm,
and after spending a year there, I had an option of getting an early release or staying there and possibly getting another shipment. But that was just a possibility. They couldn't put anything in writing. They gave me another promotions. They wanted to retain me, because of my writing skills. They needed
mhm,
they needed that, in a supervisory position. But all I wanted from them was an assurance that I could get out of South Dakota. And don't knock on South Dakota. It's a beautiful state there. It's a tourist attraction. But for a young black man in the military, living out in the wilderness,
mhm,
I just could not take it. So I just took the early option, and really, I still lament today if I should have just hung out there. Like my good friend who was stationed with me, and we're still friends, and he stayed and,
mhm.
and made a career.
Did he stay the entire time in South Dakota, though?
Pardon me.
Did he spend the rest of his time in South
He,
Dakota,
he,
or did
he
he get
stayed
to move
there
to other
another couple of
places?
years. It was about another couple of years he stayed there, and then he finally got another shipment. And
Mhm.
so he had a nice long career. And I probably would have gotten a shipment, but that was just a time when I just could not stand that anymore. And not
So
that I
I
had
just,
anything to come home to, because I mean, I had no job waiting for me. I had no girlfriend waiting for me. I had no career, to speak of.
but talk about what your experience in South Dakota really was like.
It was nowhere to go, nothing to do. Uh, Rapid City really was not. That was the closest city to where we were, out there on the prairie. That's where the we were stationed.
Hmm.
So, but we had nothing really in town to really attract a young black man. So
You
I
mentioned racism. What did that look like?
experienced much racism. There was just really nothing to do. It was really nothing. On TV, there was not and no cable or anything. It was just nothing. I guess if I was doing any writing at that time, that would have occupied my time. But I had really nothing to occupy my time there. So I started drinking a little bit, and it was just, I'm just going downhill. So I said I've got to get out of here, even though I have nothing waiting for me to get
Hmm.
released. But I just had to get out of there. Yeah.
Well, then you recognized that that season for you was over. It was time to move on.
Yes.
Okay, you stepped out on faith.
Yeah. But I was just at a crossroads in my life, because I just didn't know what I was going to do after the military.
Hmm.
You know. I just didn't know what God had planned for me at that time.
But what actually did happen was after you left.
Yeah. After then, I made up my mind that I was going to further my education,
Hmm.
and I made up my mind that I was going to go to art school, and I hadn't made a decision about theater yet. Uh, that came about as my freshman year, and I got on stage for the first time, and that's when I knew theater definitely was for me. That was something that I would always be involved in. So that and that was not, didn't know that was coming. But when I got involved in theater, and then I got the job as a correctional officer. I mean, that I didn't see that one coming either. That was supposed to be kind of temporary, but when I started making money, I had benefits there, and I
Hmm.
could get my degree and then leave there. Uh,
Hmm.
and I tell you, people don't believe when I the what I went through for 4 years, from 1972 to 1976. During those 4 years, I worked full time at night from 12 to 8. I was taking a full schedule of courses during the day. I was taking at least 14 credit hours during the day.
Hmm.
And in the evening, I was doing theater and I was rehearsing.
When did you sleep?
I didn't get much sleep during those years.
My goodness.
But the thing is that I loved theater so much, I said I would always make time for theater. And I did.
And
And
what theater group were you involved with?
I went to the Arena Players, and I did several productions with them, and that's where I met Alicia, because I was doing an opera down there, and she was one of the musicians, and that's how we met. Uh, so I did that. And at that time I was in two productions. I was in the opera with where she was. And then I was also doing another play at the same time. So I was going from one rehearsal on one floor to another rehearsal on another floor. So they were working me to death, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
And the Arena Players is the oldest, I think, Black theater company,
Yes, yes.
not in the country, but certainly in this part of the
Oh yeah.
United States.
I had some wonderful experiences down there. Met some great people, and
Mhm.
I did several productions there. That was before we got uh, the dramatic guild at my church, and that's when I spent the next 20 years doing that.
Okay. And your church is?
It's Fountain Baptist Church. Uh,
Mhm.
this was like in 1980. I was still, doing plays from time to time in the Arena Players, but our pastor at that time wanted a dramatic group. That was his vision, and so he wanted me to. He knew I had been involved in theater, and he wanted me to manage it and be the director. And so I told him that I really did not want to direct because I'm a performer, and I just want to perform. I don't want to direct. I don't want to manage. I just want to, I do characters. That's what I do. So he said, okay, well, he got a lady who was the musician at the church at that time. He got her, she had some theater background, so he let her manage. And so she was taking us through some improvisations and things like that, that you do when you're studying theater. But then she left for another job. And so it was fell to me. So I said, well, again, I'm at the same situation. I don't want to direct. And so there was a lady who stepped forward, and her name was Helen Evans. Uh, she said, well, Calvin, I will help you. I don't have any background. I said, but I have written a little play, and I will help you. We can do this. And so I said, well, you written something? She said, yeah. I said, well, I'll tell you what, you wrote it, you directed, and I'll assist you for this one before, I take over anything else. She says, okay. So we did her play. That was the first play we did there. And I was her assistant. And for the next 20 years, I was her assistant.
Mhm.
She
Okay.
was so gifted. Uh,
Mhm.
she had natural ability uh, to stage, to motivate and evaluate actors, to really be, have the insight to know what an actor's potential is. She had that ability, and
Mhm.
our plays were so successful. We made a commitment to do 2 plays at the church a year, but most of our time was on the road during the 90s.
Mhm.
People would come to the church, they would see the plays, and they would love the plays. Then we would get invited out. And so that's what we did. And during those years, we covered every part of the city, north, south, east, and west, uh, nursing homes, dinner theaters, schools, churches, whoever invited us. But you see, her body of work spoke for itself because she attracted people, because she just had that, ability to get that out of actors. And she would just work you as an actor to get what she wanted. And for myself at that time, when we got this group together, I just made a vow to God. I said, I will no longer do plays that have profanity or sexual situations. I said, this is ministry we're doing here. So I'm not doing that anymore.
Okay.
But having said that, I wondered, I said, well, am I going to get any more challenges, any more, am I limiting myself now? Some opportunities that might come my way. Am I really going to get challenged now as an actor? You have to be careful what you pray for, because I got challenged the plays that Helen would select, the characters that she gave me to do were challenge any actor. I mean, this was gut-wrenching roles that she gave me to do. And it was
T-
just
tell us, tell us about one of those roles.
pardon me.
Tell us about one of those roles.
Oh my goodness. Okay, now the roles that we did at the church, most of them were biblical period plays that we did at the church. Uh,
Okay.
we would occasionally do a comedy, but most of the ones we took on the road were comedies. Well, she had a thing where she says, "Now, I want you all to make me laugh. If we're doing a comedy, make me laugh. Because if you can make me laugh, you can affect the audience." And we were doing a drama. She said, "Make me cry. If you make me cry, you can affect the audience." And she would not accept anything less than that. And once she saw that you had the potential to give her that, she would work you until she got it. And that's what
Mhm.
I respected about her. She had that. And I played Satan, I played Jesus, I played Joseph of Arimathea, I played Judas, Pontius Pilate. These were some gut wrenching roles that I had to play.
Mhm. How did those roles impact you? Because each of those are very pronounced, very strong characters. You know,
Yes,
there's a lot
very
that's
strong characters.
demanded from
Yes,
each personification.
yes,
Uh, And typically, I'm not an actor, but I understand that you have to reach inside yourself to find something of you to bring to the character, to bring to the surface.
and and as you say that, I have to tell you this: one role that I had to do, talking about reaching inside yourself, I had to portray a woman.
Mm.
Now, that was the greatest challenge that I have had as an actor to do. And it was not planned that way. Uh, we had a dinner theater we were doing. This was a big deal. This was the pastor's 10th anniversary. Tickets
Mhm.
were sold. It's a real big deal. So we pulled out a play that we had done at a dinner theater, and it was an all female cast,
Okay.
ensemble cast. Okay. Uh, so we went into rehearsal, but the one of the actors that had originally done the play could not do it. So we had to replace that role. We have one possibility, another possibility. We were having trouble casting that role. In the meantime, we had to go into rehearsal. So I was assistant director. I read the part. I knew the part. So I read so we could get the timing and the blocking and everything together. So
Mhm.
I did
Mhm.
that while we were trying to cast the part. Well, it was getting down too close to the to production, and we had not found that part. We had a decision to make. They were used to be we had the timing. Like I said, I knew the character, you know,
Mhm.
so we had the timing and everything down. Couldn't find anybody to come in and do that, and we weren't going to have anybody come in there with a script with people that paid money like that.
Right.
Just
Yes. Mhm.
so Helen said, "Calvin, maybe we can rewrite it and make it a male part." I said, "No, I said that's going to take the play in another direction. We can't do that." Said, "Well, how do you feel about doing this?" I said, "Well," I don't know. I says, "I know the what's required of the character, and we have all the blocking." I says, "But I don't know." She says, "Well, we'll talk to the pastor." So the pastor, he would never approve of a man playing a woman, but he said,
Mhm.
you know, this is a big deal we have here. If you are willing, I will approve. If you feel that you can do this. So I said, well, we got too much on the line. No, we got to try to do this. So uh, I had to somehow reach inside myself and try to do this. It, and I, and as an actor, if I can't feel that character, it's hard for me to do a character that I can't feel that, because I'm an actor that I become the character that I do, and I wasn't feeling that woman, although I knew the lines and everything. But we said we'll just have to pray about this and just see where it goes. The critical thing about this being an ensemble cast, I could not look like a man in drag because that would take the focus off the other characters. Being an
Exactly.
ensemble cast, I had to somehow do this without the focus being on my playing a woman. That's when my ability as an actor would have to come to the fore. And I was so nervous about this because I wasn't feeling the character. So they changed my name on the program, and I hadn't shaved my mustache or anything like that. I was interacting with the people at the dinner. 1 hour before the production, they put me in makeup, put the wig on, shaved mustache, put the makeup and everything on, and I looked in the mirror, and there she was.
Mm.
So after seeing the woman,
Mhm.
I was able to pull it off. It's a video somewhere around, you know. But yeah, but that was my greatest challenge right there.
I'm sure. I'm sure. And I would love to see that video. So if you ever come across it, please,
Yeah,
let
I'll
me
try to
know.
send you a copy. Then you could judge for yourself how close I came.
Well, you also played Satan and you played Jesus.
Yes, yes, and
What
and
was that like?
and that was you talking about the Satan. Um, when we did that, we were having a problem casting. The two main characters were Satan and Peter,
Mhm,
the disciple Peter.
mhm,
Well, she wanted me to do Peter, but then she didn't have anyone to do Satan the way she wanted. So she decided to have me do Satan, and we had to find a Peter. Well, she came up with a suggestion of someone. Matter of fact, it was a friend of mine, and so I told her, I said, well, I said he doesn't have enough experience to do this part. So she said, well, I think he can do it. So I said, well, I don't know. She said, well, think I'm going to give it to him. I said, well, okay, but if he cracks, you crack with him, So
mhm.
it shows that showed me how much more that she knew that I did,
Mhm.
because he totally nailed it.
Okay.
He was great in the part, and not only that, with so little theater experience, I actually blew a line. Uh, and it was an important line because it was a bridge that was taking us to another section, and
Mhm,
uh, he recognized that. He covered me, and we were able to retrieve the line, and
mhm.
because we would have lost that whole section. So
Okay.
so she knew what I didn't know
Mhm,
about what his potential was as an actor. And that
mhm,
wasn't the first time we butted heads over that, but both times we did that, she
mhm.
was right and I was wrong. So I stopped questioning her decisions or who to cast.
Well, I'm curious to know where you went though to find your relationship to Saint. How did you manage to express what
Uh,
was necessary to be a convincing character
how did how did I find my characters?
for Satan in particular?
Oh, for Satan! Oh goodness! Uh, I don't know. I look at the dialogue, and then I just reach inside myself, and I just find. I said, what would Satan look like and you know, if I had the black robe and everything like that, and I don't know, I just looked inside. I just found that the character. Uh, every character that I do, I somehow see him. And when I see him, I do him. It's like I do Martin Luther King, you know, I do his speeches. Uh, I embody his spirit. I see his face before me when I do his speeches. Uh, I have to feel that I have to really feel that character. And in doing that Satan, yeah, I felt that character.
Did that frighten you any? Did you feel insecure? Did that bother you?
It did. It did. Uh, but I had to effectively do that so I could to challenge Peter, and that's what I was doing. Peter was going through the whole, you know, all of his guilt at having betrayed Jesus and going through all of that, and Satan kept appearing on the scene, taunting him uh, and just giving him the business, you know,
Bullying him, maybe?
bullying him. Yes,
And you had had that experience.
yeah, and I was fully engaged in that because that's what the part required.
Hmm.
See, and as an actor, I'm all in. I'm gonna whatever the part is required. That's what I'm gonna give. You know. So if I had been Peter, I would have given it. You know. So but he and I were really bouncing off each other. You know, we had that, you know, that chemistry going there. But yeah, I felt that, and even when we would, I think one of our best productions, I believe, was when I had to play Joseph of Arimathea, and I had to who, you know, who gave his burial plot to Jesus for Jesus to be buried in, and
Hmm.
he was a member of the Jewish Sanhedrin, and he felt guilty that he did not speak up for Jesus, even though he believed, you know. So the least he could do was to give his burial plot for Jesus, to give his sepulcher.
Hmm.
That was a gut wrenching part to do, very gut wrenching. But I think it was some of the best work I've done in theater.
And this is so interesting because through this period where you are fully engaged in these roles that have very strong spiritual ties, you are also working full time as a uh, guard. Is that the correct term for the
Yes,
penitentiary?
yes.
Now, how did you balance those two very opposite kinds,
That
at least on the surface? It looks like opposite ends of the spectrum.
well, it's a thing where I did not keep my Christianity a secret, and I was able to do my job because the inmates, uh, all I wanted to do was respect my badge, respect my position, and I was very fair with them, and they knew that my being the man of God that I would be fair with them,
Mhm.
but I
Mhm.
was not soft, but I was fair, and I was able to not hide my Christianity. Um, I had another a fellow officer with me who was a minister,
Mhm.
and he told me, he said, "Look," he said, "when you go in this penitentiary, you got to lay your cross down at the door because you're going into a different world, and then you come back out, and then you pick your cross up after you get out the door." I says, "Don't work that way.
Mhm.
As a Christian, you have to shine a light into a dark place." And I wasn't going to hide that. And I
Mhm.
was still able to do my job effectively.
And
And
maybe because of that, you could do your job effectively.
effectively, I never got hurt because the inmates knew that I always treated them respectfully.
Mhm.
And I just wanted them to respect my badge. So they knew that I was not someone who was in there going above beyond my job, but I was still someone that they knew uh, was a man of God. The minister I was telling you about, I had an inmate tell me, say, "This guy is a minister. He doesn't act like a minister." Uh,
Mhm. Well, I think it's the fact that you could take a job like that, stay in it for 35 years, and be the kind of person that you are now. You're warm, you're clearly, you have integrity in terms of what you believe and what you say you believe. There's no discrepancy between you acting one way and thinking another. There are people who've had similar or the same position as you, and their families have suffered tremendously because the violence and the negativity and the darkness that people are facing in a penitentiary, as a person who's supposed to, wreak punishment, basically. I'm not even sure what the mindset is, but it's certainly set up to be a negative experience for the inmates. And then you, as the person who's supposed to, watch this process going on.
Yeah.
We've all heard, I think, horror stories about people whose wives have been beaten badly, their children who have been, abused because the guard comes home and takes out all of whatever he's experienced in that situation on his family members. None of that happened in your household.
No, and it all comes back to my relationship to God. I saw men that I worked with just die so soon, and they're alcoholics and drug addiction. That's why I read my Bible before I even started my shift. I saw what that job, it's, my goodness, I could write another book about that, but I don't think I will. But I still have very vivid nightmares about having worked in there. It really does something to you when you're in there surrounded by criminals who really have nothing to lose by taking your life.
Excuse me.
And my position, I was in my last years there, I was in charge of the mental health unit, and it was just me and the nurse. And a lot of times I would have to go into a dormitory with like 20 inmate patients in there, and I had no weapon. You know, I had nothing but the grace of God going in there. And in all those years, I never got hurt. And that's a blessing. But it still does something to you. It's way up the charts as far as stress goes. And I did that for 20 years, and I hadn't planned on being there for 20 years, but it just fell that way. Because I was making pretty good money and I had benefits. And I was able to, complete my education and still be able to do the theater. But
and still have a loving heart, because again, I look at your family, and the evidence of what a person really believes shows up in the life that they're living, and you have a beautiful life, and
thank you.
It's because of your ability to completely depend on God.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's evident.
Yeah.
Well, my goodness, Calvin, we could talk another. We could talk. We could just keep going, but I think we should kind of, bring it to a close here.
Just being able to share my life experiences, talk about my dad, and just some of the things I've written about. It's really been wonderful sharing that with you.
I so appreciate you taking the time to join me here on Just Folks Conversations with Emma, and I encourage everyone to check the link that I'm going to attach to this interview and run out and get all 3 copies, the early years, the middle years, and a childhood memoir, all written by Calvin Lloyd Alston of Baltimore, but a writer for the world. And folks, you're going to have a wonderful journey as you relive these beautiful memories that Calvin has shared with us. I'm looking forward to your next book, whatever it is, whatever you choose to write about, because I'm sure you've got a couple more that are in the incubator. So we'll wait to see what happens with that. But thank you again. It's been a wonderful interview. And you're welcome to come back anytime.
Thank you, Emma. I really enjoyed it, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Been my pleasure. See you soon.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.